The first time I realized I had moved into a neighborhood ruled by a self-appointed queen. It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where you just want to enjoy coffee on your porch. But that peace lasted about 6 minutes. Because that's exactly when Karen marched across the street like she was leading a parade of authority only she believed existed. And here's the hook. I hadn't even finished unpacking my moving truck when she decided she needed to correct me. Not welcome me. Not introduce herself. Correct me. Because, in her mind, anyone who moved into her neighborhood had to bow down to her imaginary HOA kingdom. She didn't knock. Didn't greet. Didn't smile. She planted herself in front of my driveway like she was blocking a crime scene and pointed at my truck. "We don't allow this here," she said, tapping the clipboard she carried like it was a badge. It wasn't even an HOA document. It was a grocery list. But the confidence she had made me think for a moment she might actually have authority. That illusion shattered quickly. I told her I was just moving in and the truck would be gone in a few hours. But she cut me off mid-sentence, waving her hand like she was swatting a fly. "I don't care. You're already breaking multiple HOA rules. I am going to have to issue a citation." She said it with so much ego, like she expected me to be scared. But I wasn't. I just stared at her and said, "Ma'am, I haven't even signed my Wi-Fi contract yet. Calm down." You think I insulted her entire bloodline? Her face turned red instantly, and she demanded to know my name, my lot number, and whether I planned on being a problem resident. That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't someone who misunderstood her job. She didn't even have a job. She wasn't the HOA president, the vice president, the treasurer, not even the tree-watering volunteer. She was literally nothing. A bored neighbor with a laminated sheet she printed at home pretending to enforce rules she didn't actually know. And what made it worse was the way she surveyed my yard, my porch, my dog, even my welcome mat like she was judging a competition only she was qualified to judge. Every day after that, she made it her mission to harass me. First, she slipped a warning notice under my door because my grass was too green. Yes, too green. She said it didn't match the community aesthetic. The next day, she complained that my American flag was the wrong size, even though it was the exact standard size sold everywhere. She even accused my dog of walking too loudly. I am not making that up. She said the sound of his paws was disturbing her meditation routine. I tried ignoring her. I tried being polite. I even tried explaining the actual HOA handbook to her, which I downloaded directly from the association's website. She didn't care. She treated the real rules like they were fake and her fake rules like they were written into the Constitution. And every time she walked over with that ridiculous clipboard, she had a new complaint ready. It got to the point where I couldn't even take out my trash without her magically appearing from behind some bush like a wildlife documentary narrator, whispering, "You know that bin is 1 inch too far from the curb." She was obsessed. Not with order because nothing about her was orderly, but with control. She couldn't stand the fact that someone moved in who didn't fear her. And if there's one thing Karen can handle, it's losing control. One afternoon, when I was installing a small patio light, she recorded me on her phone from across the street, zooming in dramatically like she was filming for a crime investigation show. She yelled that I was performing unauthorized construction, and that she would report me to the HOA and the county. I laughed and told her she was welcome to call anyone she wanted. Turns out, challenging her inflated ego was the worst thing I could have done. Her eyes widened, and she said the most Karen sentence ever spoken. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Oh, but I did. I was dealing with a bored neighbor so desperate for power that she created an entire government in her head. She wanted to intimidate me. She wanted me to follow her every command. She wanted me to be scared of her. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that the more she pushed, the more she was setting herself up for the biggest embarrassment of her life. Because I wasn't the type of person to get bullied by a fake HOA cop. And she was about to learn that her made-up authority wasn't just powerless, it was illegal. and the moment she tried to escalate her lies, she accidentally triggered a chain of events that would end with the police handcuffing her in front of the entire neighborhood. And all of it started right there, on that Sunday morning, when Karen decided to flex power she never had on the wrong neighbor. You know that feeling when someone accuses you of something so ridiculous that you were not even offended, you were just confused. That's exactly how I felt on the day Karen marched onto my property waving a stack of papers and claiming I had violated rules so absurd that even a fictional HOA wouldn't approve them. And here's the hook. She wasn't just making up rules. She was enforcing them like she had the full legal backing of the United States government. It started early in the morning, around 7:20 a.m., when I heard loud banging on my front door. Not a knock, not a ring. Actual banging, like the police serving a warrant. I opened the door half asleep, coffee barely in hand, only to find Karen standing there with her sunglasses on, hair pinned like she was about to run a courtroom, and holding what looked like 15 sheets of paper. She shoved the stack into my chest and said, "You are being issued multiple violations. Immediate correction required." I blinked slowly, trying to process if this was real life or if I was still dreaming. Violations for what? I asked. She smirked like she'd been waiting for me to ask so she could deliver her speech. For non-compliant holiday decor, unauthorized vehicle positioning, improper lawn texture, and excessive porch activity. I just stared at her. My mind froze on one phrase. Improper lawn texture. My lawn. Grass. Normal grass. Texture. What did she want? Velvet. She then proceeded to read each violation aloud like she was an officer reading Miranda rights. First, she said my porch light was too bright. Then she claimed my car was parked at an angle not approved by the HOA. For the record, it was parked straight. Perfectly straight. Next, she accused me of having unauthorized outdoor furniture, a single chair. One chair. She said its color clashed with community earth tones. The chair was brown. I told her none of these rules existed, and she lifted her chin dramatically. They do now, she said, tapping the papers. As of last night, I took the liberty of updating the guidelines. I couldn't help but laugh. You updated them. You were not even on the HOA board. She stepped closer, almost nose to nose, and whispered, I don't need a title to protect this community. That was the moment I realized Karen didn't think she was enforcing rules. She thought she was the HOA. In her mind, the board existed under her, not the other way around. But the situation escalated when I actually looked through the documents she gave me. They weren't printed from any official source. They were typed in Comic Sans, misspelled everywhere, and included rules like grass must be exactly 2.5 inches tall at all times. Residents may not exhale loudly outdoors after 9 p.m. No vehicle may produce a reflection brighter than moonlight. All porch sitting must be done silently. It was insanity. Out of pure curiosity, I asked her how she planned to enforce these rules. She smiled proudly and said, with fines, effective immediately. She then pointed to an empty section on the form and said, you owe the HOA $275. For what? I asked. For everything. She replied. I almost choked. I am not paying you. You know that, right? That asked when her entire demeanor changed. Her face tightened. Her lips pressed together. And she stomped forward like she owned my doorstep. Failure to comply, she said, will result in escalation. I have authority to report residents. You'd be wise to take me seriously. Instead of arguing, I simply said, show me where this is written in the real HOA handbook. Her eyes widened. She didn't have the handbook. She never read it. She probably didn't know where to find it. She crossed her arms and said, I don't need a handbook. I am the handbook. That line alone told me everything I needed to know. I told her politely to leave my property. She refused. She stood in my driveway taking pictures of my car from 18 different angles like she was documenting a crime scene. When I walked back inside, she yelled from my porch that she would take this to the highest level. She didn't specify what level. Maybe she meant the HOA president. Maybe the mayor. Maybe the Supreme Court. With Karen, anything was possible. Later that afternoon, I got a formal email from the real HOA. I opened it expecting more drama. But instead, it said, "Please disregard any handwritten notices or printed forms distributed by neighbor Karen. She holds no position within the HOA and has been warned multiple times not to impersonate an officer." I sat there laughing. Multiple times. So I wasn't her first victim. But while I thought this was the end of it, Karen apparently took my refusal as a personal attack. Because instead of backing down, she doubled down. She stood on her lawn staring at my house for hours, pacing with her phone, rehearsing lines, planning something. I didn't know it yet, but she had already come up with her next move. And it was much bigger than fake papers and imaginary rules. She was about to make the one mistake that would change everything. She decided to escalate her lies by calling 911, claiming I was the one breaking laws she invented. And that's when her imaginary authority turned into a real legal problem. For her, if you've ever seen someone so desperate for control that they do something unbelievably reckless, then you already know exactly what kind of mindset Karen was in the day she picked up the phone and dialed 911. And here's the hook. She didn't just call the cops, she lied to them, exaggerated the situation, and tried to weaponize law enforcement against me. But what she didn't realize was that every lie she told was about to come crashing down on her in the most spectacular way possible. The whole thing started on a Tuesday afternoon. I was outside cleaning my garage, reorganizing tools, minding my own business. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of normal day any neighbor would be grateful for. But Karen, not a chance. She stood across the street with her arms crossed, pacing like a cartoon villain planning her final attack. I ignored her. I'd gotten good at that. But then she pulled out her phone and started recording me. Again, I asked, "Karen, what now?" She didn't answer. She kept filming, zooming in dramatically, breathing heavily like she was capturing evidence of a major crime. Then, right in front of me, she dialed 911. Not HOA, not a neighbor, the actual police. And she did it with this triumphant smirk, like she was about to unleash the ultimate punishment on me. I stood there stunned as she started her performance. "Yes. Hello," she said in the most dramatic voice possible. "I need to report an aggressive and dangerous man threatening me on my property." My jaw dropped. I wasn't even within 20 feet of her. I wasn't talking to her. I wasn't even looking at her until she started lying to emergency services. She continued her fake panic attack, adding tears to her voice. "He*s yelling at me. He*s refusing to leave my yard. I feel unsafe." She even threw in, "I think you might have a weapon." That was the moment my stomach dropped, not because I was scared of the police, but because I couldn't believe someone could lie so confidently about a neighbor just to get them in trouble. I said loudly so it would be on her recording, "Karen, I am in my own garage. I am not on your property. I have no weapon." She angled her phone away so my voice couldn't be heard. Her lies were so deliberate, so practiced. It was honestly disturbing. When she hung up, she gave me this smug look. "Now you'll learn," she said. "Let us see you ignore me after this." She thought she'd won. She thought the police would show up, listen to her sob story, and automatically take her side. She genuinely believed she had the power to punish me for not following her made-up rules. But what Karen didn't think about were cameras. Cameras she didn't know existed. Cameras the HOA had installed on the streetlight directly above her house the year before because she had harassed multiple neighbors. Cameras that recorded everything. About 15 minutes later, 2 patrol cars pulled into the neighborhood. I stood in my driveway calmly, hands visible. I knew I didn't do anything wrong, but I wouldn't lie, I was still nervous. I didn't know how far her lies went. I didn't know what she told them. But the officers walked up to me politely and asked, "Sir, did you have an altercation with your neighbor today?" Before I could speak, Karen sprinted toward them, waving her arms like she was flagging down a helicopter. "Officers! Officers!" He threatened me. He refused to leave my yard. He was shouting, and one officer held up a hand to stop her. "Ma'am, we'll talk to you in a moment." They asked me for my side. I told them exactly what happened. She stood on her own property, recorded me, and lied. I pointed to my garage, my tools, my untouched property line. That's when one officer said, "We have reports from other neighbors that there has been ongoing conflict. Is there any footage of today's incident?" That was my golden moment. I pulled out my phone and said, "Actually, yes. My home security camera covers my driveway." But before I even had to show anything, one officer clicked his radio and asked dispatch to pull footage from the HOA street camera. That was the moment Karen's confidence evaporated. She turned pale. She started shaking her head and whispering, No, you don't need to check the cameras." The officers watched the footage on a tablet hooked to the patrol car. I stood quietly. Karen tried to peek but couldn't see. The silence between the officers was intense. When they finished, they looked at each other with that expression police make when they caught someone lying badly. One officer approached Karen. "Ma'am, the footage does not match your statement." She froze, completely still. The officer continued. "You stated he was on your property. The camera shows he was not. You stated he threatened you. The footage shows no confrontation. You stated he had a weapon. The footage shows none." Karen started backpedaling immediately. Maybe I misremembered. Maybe the angle, maybe the video, maybe he moved." The officer cut her off firmly. "Ma'am, filing a false police report is a crime." Her face twisted in panic. But I was scared. For something that didn't happen. The officer asked calmly. She opened and closed her mouth like a fish out of water. The officers informed her she was being detained for questioning regarding misuse of 911 services, harassment, and knowingly making false statements. The look on her face was priceless shock mixed with pure disbelief. She genuinely thought she was untouchable. But not today. As the officers handcuffed her, she screamed, "You can arrest me. I am with the HOA." One officer replied, "Ma'am, the HOA doesn't give you the right to break the law." And with that, Karen, the same woman who tried to weaponize the police against me, was escorted to the patrol car while half the neighborhood watched from behind blinds. Her plan didn't just backfire. It exploded in her face. There's a certain moment during any confrontation when everything shifts, when the truth hits so hard that it changes the direction of the entire situation. And here's the hook. The second the police started asking real questions and checking real evidence, it became painfully clear that I wasn't the problem at all. The real criminal wasn't the neighbor she accused. It was the woman who called them. When the officers arrived, they approached with calm professionalism, but you could tell they were mentally preparing for a heated dispute. They didn't know Karen yet. They didn't know how far she would go or how confidently she could lie. But they were about to find out very quickly. One officer spoke with me while the other escorted Karen to the side, giving her space to present her story. She started her performance with full theatrics, hand gestures, shaky voice, dramatic pauses. She claimed I had threatened her, trespassed on her property, ignored multiple official citations, and tried to intimidate her into silence. She even said I had been stalking her movements. Meanwhile, I stood 20 feet away in my garage holding a broom, trying not to laugh at the absurdity of it. The officer who was speaking with me asked simple, logical questions. "Sir, did you have any contact with her today?" I told him honestly. The only contact was when she filmed me and called 911. "Did you approach her property?" "No." "Did you make any threats?" "Absolutely not." "Do you have footage?" "Yes." That word footage made the entire atmosphere shift. The officer paused, then asked if he could take a look. Before I even had a chance to pull up my camera system, the second officer returned and said, "Dispatch is retrieving the HOA street camera footage. It covers both properties." Karen's entire expression changed. Her fake confidence started to crack. She tried to step in and talk over the officers. "No need for cameras. I've already explained everything. I am the victim here." But the officers weren't taking her word for anything. They told her to step aside and remain quiet while they reviewed the evidence. As soon as they accessed the HOA footage on their patrol tablet, the truth unraveled in seconds. The video clearly showed Karen standing in her yard, recording me. yelling accusations at someone who wasn't even facing her. It showed me working inside my garage, not stepping under her lawn, not approaching her, not even looking at her. Then the officers listened to the audio from my security camera. It caught her full dramatic 911 call, every lie, every exaggerated breath, every false accusation. And the best part, it caught me saying calmly in the background, "Karen, I am in my own garage. I am not on your property. I have no weapon." When they played that part, both officers looked at each other in disbelief. That's when the energy shifted completely. They walked back toward Karen, and even from a distance, I could see the tension building. Karen tried to smile like she expected praise for being brave, but the officers' faces were stone cold. One of them said, "Ma'am, we need to clarify some inconsistencies in your statement." Karen's smile wobbled. "What inconsistencies?" she asked, voice suddenly high-pitched. "The footage does not support your claims," the officer said. Karen laughed nervously. "Maybe the camera angle was off," she offered weakly. The officer replied, "We have multiple angles." She swallowed hard. They listed each lie one by one. She said I stepped onto her property. The footage showed I didn't. She said I yelled at her. The audio showed silence until she yelled. She said I had a weapon. The footage showed I was holding nothing but a toolbox and a broom. She said I threatened her. The footage showed no interaction at all. Karen tried to argue, to twist things, to cry again. But the officers didn't budge. They asked her the one question that sealed her fate. "Ma'am, is there any reason you knowingly provided false information to emergency services?" Her eyes widened. I didn't knowingly. I felt threatened. But the footage clearly contradicts your account. The officer said, "Your feeling threatened does not justify inventing details that did not occur." Karen switched tactics instantly. She went from crying victim to angry authoritarian. "I am HOA. I am responsible for enforcing community safety. I have the right to report suspicious behavior," she yelled. The officer replied firmly, "Ma'am, being part of an HOA does not give you the authority to fabricate events." When he said fabricate, Karen fully panicked. She backed up, hands trembling, denied everything she had clearly done moments before on video. But it was too late. They had proof. They had recordings. They had timestamps. They had her voice laying on the call. Then came the moment no one, except maybe every neighbor watching from behind curtains, expected would actually happen. "Ma'am," the officer said, "You're being detained for filing a false police report, misuse of emergency services, and harassment." Karen froze. No, you can't do that. Arrest him. He is the one who caused all this." The officers ignored her protests and gently took hold of her wrists. When the handcuffs clicked, she screamed the most iconic Karen line ever heard in the neighborhood. "I am with the HOA. You can't arrest me." The officer replied calmly, almost bored. "The law applies to everyone." "Ma'am." Watching her get handcuffed on her own false 911 call was a level of poetic justice I didn't know life could deliver so perfectly. The neighbors watched from their windows. The officers stayed professional. And Karen, she finally realized her fake authority couldn't protect her from real consequences. Because once the truth came out, it was obvious. The only person committing a crime that day was her. Some moments unfold so perfectly, so shockingly, that they feel like a scene from a movie. And here's the hook. The instant Karen was placed in handcuffs, the entire neighborhood held its breath. And the HOA, the same group she claimed to represent, suddenly rushed to protect her, not because she was innocent, but because they were terrified her actions would expose everything they'd been ignoring for years. As the police guided Karen toward the patrol car, she twisted around, shouting every excuse she could think of. "This is a misunderstanding. I was trying to keep the community safe. I am the HOA authority." She screamed so loudly half the street heard it. But the officers didn't respond. They'd heard it all before. And her act was over. Just before the car door closed, she shouted one last desperate plea. "Call the HOA. They'll tell you everything." But the officers simply shut the door and walked away from the vehicle. For the first time since I had moved into that neighborhood. Karen was silent. While the police questioned me one last time, neighbors gradually emerged from their homes like it was the grand finale of a live show. Some held coffee cups. Some stood with arms crossed. Some even recorded discreetly on their phones. It felt like the entire community had been waiting years for this moment. The officers thanked me for staying calm and told me all statements and footage would be filed in the report. They reassured me I had done nothing wrong. "We appreciate your cooperation," one officer said before leaving. "If she bothers you again after this, let us know." The second they pulled away, the HOA president's SUV came speeding down the street like they'd been waiting around the corner the entire time. They pulled up to Karen's house, stepped out in a panic, and ran straight to me not to check if I was okay, but to demand, "What exactly did you tell the police?" Their tone was rushed, nervous, frantic, not concerned, afraid. I told them the truth. I told them what happened. I showed them the footage. She lied. She tried to have me arrested for nothing. The HOA president's face tightened. "Did you mention the HOA at all?" They asked quickly. There it was. The HOA didn't care that Karen had harassed residents. They cared that her actions made them look incompetent. And worse, that she had been acting like a self-appointed enforcer while they did absolutely nothing to stop her. They pulled me aside like they were trying to put out a PR fire. "Listen, we're aware Karen can be enthusiastic," they said carefully, "but reporting a resident, well, that creates complications. We hope you understand." I laughed. Complications. She filed a false police report. They shifted uncomfortably. "Yes, and we'll handle that internally." Internally. They had ignored her behavior for years. They wanted to sweep this under the rug before it became public. Within an hour, they were knocking on doors, talking to neighbors, and insisting everything was under control. But the neighbors weren't buying it. Everyone knew the truth. Everyone had experienced Karen's reign of terror in one way or another. Her fake notices, her threats, her recordings, her constant complaints. And now that she had been caught, people were finally ready to talk. Later that evening, the HOA held an emergency meeting. And by emergency, I mean they dragged out a folding table in the driveway and tried to pretend they had authority over anything happening. The president cleared their throat, looked around, and said, "We want to assure everyone that today's incident was an isolated misunderstanding." A neighbor shouted, "She has harassed half the street." Another yelled, "She forged violation letters and stuck them on my door." Someone else chimed in, "She threatened to fine my kid for skateboarding." The HOA's attempt to calm people failed instantly. For once, the community was united against them and their negligence. That night, around 9 p.m., I received an email from the HOA. It was clearly written in panic. "The HOA does not endorse or authorize any actions taken by Karen. She acted independently and without our approval. Please disregard any notices previously distributed by her." Translation: We knew she was a problem, but we didn't stop her. And now we were trying to save ourselves. The next morning, Karen's husband quietly returned home from the police station after picking her up. She didn't step outside. She didn't look out her window. Her car remained parked. Her porch was empty. Her phone, normally glued to her hand, was nowhere in sight. For the first time since I moved in, the neighborhood was peaceful. Word spread quickly that Karen had been charged with filing a false police report and harassment. Nothing major, she wasn't going to prison, but enough to give her a record. Enough to stop her from pretending she had authority ever again. A few days later, the HOA announced that Karen would no longer be involved in any community-related matters. The best part, she had never officially been involved in the first place. They were simply banning her from the role she invented for herself. Neighbors celebrated quietly. People waved at me more. Someone even brought cookies as thanks for finally surviving the Karen arc. I didn't do anything heroic. I just refused to bow to someone who thought she could bully the whole community through intimidation and lies. But the truth is, Karen wasn't just punished by the police. She was punished by exposure. Her power came from no one challenging her. The moment the truth was out, She went from HOA Queen to the neighborhood's biggest cautionary tale. And that's how Karen's downfall became the one thing that finally brought the whole community together by showing everyone what happens when fake power meets real consequences.